And good morning. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News, coming to you from our digital desk. We're about to take you to a news conference being held by the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. The board for the CMSD schools voted unanimously last night for their restructuring plan. They're calling it the district's Building a Brighter Future, Building Brighter Futures. This plan will consolidate 29 schools starting next year. The Cleveland Metropolitan School District has lost 50% of their student population over the past decade. They are a shrinking school district with just way too many buildings, and it was pushing the district towards physical emergency with the state. It does appear we're about to set to get underway here. There is a number of things that families are going to have to do now, especially if they attend a school that's going to be closed. They need to basically claim their spot at the new school that they are going to attend, that their child is supposed to attend. And I'm assuming that's a large part of what we're going to hear today, is this need very quickly for students and families to claim their spots at their new schools. So let's take you now live to the news event being held by Dr. Warren Morgan. That's not him on the screen, but Dr. Warren Morgan will be taken to the podium. He is the CEO of the Cleveland Metropolitan School District.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm John Benedict. I'm the Communications Officer for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We're going to have some question and answer with our board chair and our CEO. I'd like to introduce board chair Sarah Ellicott and our CEO, Dr. Warren G. Morgan.
Good morning, everyone. I'm CMSD Board Chair Sarah Ellicott. Last night, the board unanimously voted to approve the Building Brighter Futures plan, which will right-size our district, allow us to offer more opportunities for our students across the district, no matter which school they go to, and allow us to have them in new or upgraded facilities as well. We're really thrilled about this next step in our work. This has been grounded in our student outcomes focused governance framework and the board's goals for the district. And I want to congratulate Dr. Morgan on a job well done in presenting the plan, adjusting the plan, and from here, Dr. Morgan and I will take questions.
David, would you start with a question or comment? Sure. So the $30 million per year in savings that are going to be coming from this plan, the vast majority of them are coming from staffing. Where are they coming from? And then also, I know you said you're waiting to find out how many students before you determine what the staffing is, but I mean, already you're going to need fewer principals, right? I mean, can't you talk about fewer staff there?
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you for the question. And first, I know we're at Gann Academy today, so I want to give another shout out to our Glenville Tar Brothers for being three-time state champions in 4 years, and many of our Gann students play for Glenville, so just wanted to give that shout out. Yes, we anticipate saving at least $30 million through the Building Brighter Futures plan. Now, there are a few things to think about when looking at this, and actually, one of the board meetings, I showed what that breakdown looks like. So there will be some savings from just operations, taking buildings offline, some of the things we get from our facilities. But there are also, some of this comes from human capital. We recently had a state audit. Actually, I heard last night there was a question on, really figuring out about our finances. We had a state audit, and one of the things it told us was that we had too many buildings for the number of students we had. And it also told us we had too many administrators for the number of students that we have. And so we know by having multiple schools, sometimes in one building, that's adding to the administrative load that we have. So we've been able to talk with our administrators. We've been engaging with them for a year. Some of those administrators that this plan displaces, they've already been told. We've already are starting to make announcements because the board has approved this plan to inform who the school leaders will be in these new buildings next year. So that is something we do know of the plan, and we've been able to be transparent. Assistant principals, deans, and campus coordinators are things we expect to be able to announce on the other side of the break. And then, as you mentioned, enrollment will determine everything else. Our collective bargaining operating agreements lays out pretty clearly our staffing models and what takes place with that. And in cases where we need MOUs to make adjustments, we're prepared to work with our union partners on that.
How many folks have been, you said notifications have gone out to some folks?
To our school leaders, yes. And those when we sent the recommendation out, we said, should this recommendation go this way, this is what this recommendation will mean for you, and you've been displaced. They were notified of that actually on the day of the recommendation.
So how many layoffs is that then?
That's a displacement. It's not necessarily a layoff. So we just said you are no longer a principal, and there's many different. We have a road ahead of us to figure out what those options are for our school leaders.
So they could still be placed into
Could
another position in the district.
exactly. Yeah.
Well, how many displacements?
I can get that number specifically for you, but we've also been able to announce who are going to be the new school leaders.
There were a number of community meetings where you were getting feedback on the plan that ultimately passed here last night. What feedback went into the plan from the community, from parents, from students, staff members?
Yeah, I know we've had quite visible feedback and engagement sessions over the last several months, and we increased our board public comment so we could get additional input. But I do want to ground this in years of input, right? I've served on the board for nearly 7 years now. I've heard the same input from families and community members across that time. It has been, you need to educate our kids better. Our kids need to know how to do math. They need to know how to read and write. We need career and college opportunities that are equitable and that meaningfully prepare our students for the future. Again, when we did the CEO search about 3 years ago, the board facilitated community input about what folks wanted to see in what the future leader would deliver. Those same messages came across that time. The CEO heard those same comments largely when he was doing his CEO listening time, and when the mayor did his school and community listening tour several years ago when he first came into office, he heard the same feedback. We reviewed that report. We've reviewed all of that input, and it's been consistent. Another thing you've heard us say before is that folks are worried about safety. They want safe school facilities in more than one way, not just about violence, but safe and warm facilities where buildings are not falling apart, where students can feel comfortable. So as the recommendations were being built, all of that input was being taken into account. And I believe a plan was delivered that takes into account those needs. At the end of the day, yes, we heard additional input and we pivoted in many ways, and Dr. Morgan can speak to the formula that he used to decide when he might want to adjust the recommendation. But a lot of the input that we heard now recently was about implementation. The strategy is built on years of input and what we need to deliver for our students that frankly we have not, and we will. I think Dr. Morgan is gonna speak.
Just a really quick follow-up. Thank you, Chair Ellicott, for that. So one of the things I was here during this time, between the recommendation on November 5th and December 9th, we've had hundreds, over 100 meetings, and that's not inclusive of times I just went out to schools myself, conversations we were having. And as Chair Ellicott mentioned, the majority were on implementation. What can you do to really ensure that this program is going to deliver? How can you fulfill on the promise of building a brighter future? There was very few on the actual recommendation itself. And we took it through a framework of what I shared last night, because you're going to hear many different pieces of input. Did you hear it multiple times? Did it change your modeling in terms of the data we were looking at initially that went behind this? Does it change the benefits that we're going to go into students? So if we change something, our students now not going to have that great experience that we delivered on. And then also the other thing we looked at, are we making a one-off decision? And that's always hard because you hear a community and you're sitting with them and you're like, yes, your school is unique. And then if you make that decision, then you're setting a precedence for someone else. So we wanted to see what we could do. And of all those situations, there was only one piece of feedback that we heard that met all of those cases. That was still moving the Dyke Performing Arts School into Mound as in the original recommendation, but now merging those two school communities together. Many of the families at Mound were going to stay there for the performing arts, and now they'll get a chance to stay there as well. So just wanted to share, as Chair Ellicott mentioned, most of it was on implementation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if the district is concerned that the plan will result in enough students leaving that there will still be buildings that have enrollment that is too low to achieve revoked at that Euclid Park family meeting where that like one parent stood up and said like, 50% of our families are going to go to charter schools. And I guess I just want to know what kind of contingencies there are around that.
Yeah, I'll start with that. Yeah, and that's always a concern. I mean, we see what the birth rates are. We have not enough students in our city, so not even just thinking about what's in CMSD for the number of schools that we have. And that's something on our radar, but we can't allow that fear to dictate our decisions. We have a promise that we have to deliver on for our scholars. And the other thing, we'll have a competitive advantage. When I think about what we're promising to deliver on college and career readiness on all of our high schools, the enrichment programs we're putting on in our elementary schools, that's something that we can't deliver on right now. And quite frankly, many of our charter partners, some of the surrounding schools aren't either. And so we tell our families, stick with CMSD. And we also tell those families that are outside of CMSD, come with us. I had the opportunity to meet with Councilman Polensik over this weekend, and it was a great meeting, but one of the things he shared was just how many schools are in his ward altogether, and not just CMSD, but private schools, charter schools, and there are a lot. And when we think about all the schools and not enough students, that's part of the destabilization of our city. So the next thing we have to do in terms of the charge is not only making sure we have quality schools in every neighborhood, quality, whether you're a CMSD school or outside of it, but then also making sure we're managing the choice because more options and spreading our students thin, no one's going to be able to deliver on that promise.
Danielle?
How difficult has this process been moving up to this point? And then how difficult is it going to be over the next few months when this is now implemented?
Look, on our end, on the board's end, the difficulty is part of the work, right? We have a responsibility to students, and we have to charge ahead as reasonable adults in a sobering situation about the reality of our city, the population, and what we have and haven't delivered for students at the end of the day. So the difficulty for me is when, we've been doing the reporting on our goals and guardrails, and I see where we stand on college readiness. That's difficult for me. That's difficult for me. This is difficult in the sense that we are hearing from families. We understand how uncomfortable this is, how it feels uncertain. We want to make sure we meet that with the information that they need. And Dr. Morgan has a solid plan on that front. I personally have charged him from the start on this. Bring only a plan that you can deliver. Model it out on every setting that you need to before you bring the recommendation so that we can minimize that discomfort and those challenges, but it will be hard in terms of how we implement and how we make sure that we deliver it to families. And we understand that that's challenging. We're looking to meet families every step of the way and continue to engage. Anything to add?
So what is your message to families who are facing the closure or merger of the school closest to them? They're worried about their kids having access. The closest of their school is helping their kids get to school. What is your message to those families about what you're trying to do to continue to engage their students?
My first message is we hear you. One of the things I did several meetings across yesterday talking to staff, and I said in this time you have to lean in with empathy into the entire community because loss is real, and you want to lean into that and say I hear you. But then the next message is we've got you. One of the things you heard Chair Ellicott mention how we need to make sure we're modeling this out. In our modeling, the average for the average student in terms of where they live, there is a CMSD school with less than a mile within them. So now that may not be their school of choice, it may not be, but there's an option, and now they're quality options. One of the things about this plan is it shouldn't have to be that school that's right up the street isn't delivering on that promise. Ideally, we would love that kids can go to the school that's closest to them, right in their neighborhood, and get the same high quality education no matter where they go. And so that's the goal of Building Brighter Futures, and this is just a starting point. Let me go on record and say, just because we're putting programs in schools will not automatically transform them overnight. We have work to do on the implementation, and that's what you heard what Chair Ellicott mentioned in terms of the delivery of this promise, something that we should do in the future and what we should have been doing. But now those options are there, and families have that option. So I would say we've got you. We want to hold you during this time and help you make the choices right for you and your family.
I spoke to the president of the Cleveland Teachers Union after the announcement was made, and she expressed some frustration, especially around communication with teachers and communication with special needs parents
Yeah, President Obrinsky has been a phenomenal partner. I would say as we think about the communication, she's been so helpful to actually think about like, hey, we have weekly check-ins. You know, one of the things that she always just says is like, think about the experience of my teachers. Have you thought about this? And so we've been working with her. We'll continue to work with her, and her feedback has helped fine-tune the process as well. She's been a phenomenal partner, so I look forward to continuing to work with her.
And then one thing that she brought up to me last night was a concern about attrition. Is there anything that you guys are going to be actively doing or implementing to make sure that teachers feel like loved and that they want to stay with CMSD?
Yeah. I mean, change is hard, so you lean in with empathy. I would never go up to anyone and say, you know, this is not going to be hard or challenging, so you lean in with that, and I can't take that part away, but we're here to support every step of the way and letting our staff know the options. Also knowing that these are mergers and not closures. That was one of the biggest pieces of feedback we've learned from last year. We did this last year on a much smaller scale with 2 of our schools. One was a straight up closure in terms of our union language. The other one was a merger. And knowing that students have a seat at a welcoming school should they choose it, and there's a process for staff to generally follow them should there be seats, that has helped alleviate a lot of concerns. And that was also feedback we heard from our union partners. So just continuing to look to lean in, and where possible. Like I was at Dyke yesterday meeting with the staff, and we had our union leadership there. And there are things we can do to support the process moving forward, not only by following the union contract, but where possible, MOUs and different things like that. So we're willing and ready to explore options if needed.
I want to add to that, you know, something that Dr. Morgan has shared as he's plotted this out in the recommendation to the board is that teachers will have a better experience in many instances going forward, right? Currently with our under-enrolled school buildings, we have teachers who are maybe the only subject level, grade level teacher in their school. The idea here is that they'll be able to departmentalize. There will be more opportunities just to have colleagues within the same subjects to work together to better support students. So there are certainly some pros and some improvements for educators on the other side of this plan as well, understanding that the transition is going to be challenging.
Can I ask about the transition for the merger, specific high schools? I know it's a volatile time in kids' lives, you know, restarting basically, or making new friend groups, or getting along with each other. What's the plan for, you know, having maybe more guidance counselors, or, you know, how is this all going to work to make sure that these kids actually get along, because they're rivals, right?
Yeah.
In some sort.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a big transformation plan on the high school front, but the majority of our high school mergers are within the same campus. So they already play sports together. They are in the same building. They share sometimes lunch periods. They share teachers in some cases. You know, it's essentially they're in the same building. So when we think about those campuses, they're already there. It's just now going to operate as one school. We've had that this year with Garrett Morgan, still being 2 schools, but 1 leader, all on 1 campus. So the majority of our high school students, there will be no change. And for those students, they don't even have to make a change if they don't want to. They can just stay right there. It's just the school is merging, and the leadership configuration will be different. So that's one thing. For these other campuses, there's 5 instances where the building itself is closing and it's merging with a new school. And we're prepared to support in those transitions. In some cases, some of those communities have already started working together. When I think about the Collinwood-Glenville merger, that's one we've talked about for a while. Doing things like prom that they do together. They do college tours together. The staff do certain professional development together. In some cases, they play on similar sports teams. We have some students here at Gann Academy, some that play for Glenville, some that play for Collinwood. And the new beautiful stadium that we have right up the way. So there's a lot of momentum and optimism to build on. And let's not forget for that campus the promise of a new high school in the future. So we're looking forward to build that. The final thing I will share is we've been doing a lot of work around safety and security, particularly with the city and collaborating with the city. That has decreased our amount of serious safety incidents in school. And working to really promote safety to and from school. That's a collaboration effort, and we're going to continue to increase that, as well as, in some cases, increase our security efforts as well as support staff.
Sorry. He answered.
I wanted to ask how many students with disabilities are impacted by this plan in terms
district have enough resources and staff to work with those families of students with special education needs?
Yeah. I can get the specific number. I'll follow up with you on that. And a great question. You know, we've heard so much about special education, and I want to echo what Chair Ellicott mentioned last night. We have a legal obligation. So with special education, there are legal obligations that you have to follow in terms of IEPs, in terms of space, and we have to follow that. And if you're not, you know, there's many repercussions for that. And so we will be following our legal obligation, as well as ensuring that all of our students have that welcoming environment and the resources needed. And so during this time, it's going to be really important to continue to listen. We're sharing information with families of students in single classrooms this week to let them know, you know, place options. But that's just the beginning of a conversation where we'll be working to help families navigate that choice. That happens every year where we talk with our families, where they are navigating their choices, and we want to up those efforts. You know, I heard some very concerning comments last night for public comment. I was so happy that that mother stayed until the end. It was a grandmother, and both myself and Dr. Mosley followed up with them. We got that information from that staff member, and we're following up and got some more information as well as some context. And so in those cases where things like that happen, that is not my expectation of our team and how we're delivering for our scholars. And so when I know of those, like I said, I want to know their names, and we will follow up.
I want to add, so on this special education point, I did make a point about it last night that more than a quarter of our student population are students with disabilities. For those who've been monitoring the goals and guardrails sessions, they're always at the very end of our meetings, and there's been a lot going on, I know, but the board always has Dr. Morgan disaggregate the more vulnerable populations when we are monitoring our progress, right? Like, we're always looking at English language learners. We're always looking at students with disabilities and whether we are delivering for them. We've done that with nearly every, if not every, report that the CEO has presented on the goals and guardrails. And so I think that that should be a signal to everyone that this will continue to be not only a priority for Dr. Morgan, but for the board as well.
And I know this is just going off of the point that you just made, and I know that you mentioned this last night, but if you could just reiterate again, given the turmoil in the federal government, and obviously we know that IEPs, special needs education, is enforced currently by the federal government, but if that were to change in the near future, are you still going to be prioritizing those needs?
Yeah, look, the IDEA Act is federal law now. Were it to change, just like I said last night, there's no way that this district can succeed by not making sure that we are delivering for a quarter of our population, right? So even if that were not the law, even if that were not the right and moral thing to do, for us to not provide the right educational environment for more than 27% of our kids, we just wouldn't be able to succeed as a district. So no matter what happens, we will continue to make sure that those populations are appropriately served in our district.
How soon will this $30 million savings be realized? You know, change does cost money if you're trying to save money. So how soon will you be able to see that, and will that get you to the goal of saving $150 million over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons people ask about a phase-in approach, and with the phase-in, you actually don't realize your savings. You do it; it trickles in. You're needing to put in different costs, and over time, 3-4 years later, you realize, wow, we didn't save as much, and then also the context can change, and we know what 3-4 years looks like. Even with our financial forecast, 3-4 years from now, it's showing, okay, what else after doing this? I mean, that's the current reality. But to answer your question more specifically, we'll realize those immediately. That is why we're doing it all at once. And one of the things we shared with the board, not in our last meeting, but the one on December 2nd, was how much we're anticipating this plan to cost, in terms of costs that we'll have to put in, and we're estimating about $7 million. And that doesn't take away the $30 million. It's actually more, and then adding that $7 million on gets us to about $31 million, and that's still at least. We're looking to see what we realize.
We're going to take a couple more questions, Connor.
How much of the savings, the $30 million, is coming from those operational efficiencies versus how much of it is flesh and blood, like people?
Yeah. I can give you the slide breakdown. We actually had a slide at our December 2nd board meeting where we talked about programmatic aspects, which includes staffing, but it's not all staff included in there. The operations is right around, I think it was like 1 or 2 million, but the majority comes from, just the programmatic aspects, the staffing aspects, and that's about 36 million savings and so forth and so on. The money that we have to pay that goes into this is 7 million, and that gets us to about 31 million. But there's a chart, and I can get that to you.
And will teachers be laid off?
Like I said, we have to figure out the enrollment first. We have really clear guidance in terms of our best rubric and what happens with teaching staff. So we have to, the number one thing that needs to happen right now is for families to make a choice. Come January, the portal will be open live until February 27th. That will help all of us to determine our staffing. And not only for the teaching staff, I was having central office webinars yesterday. It's the same for central office. We're doing our central office budgets too, and we're expecting to make savings and cuts at central office as well.
Danielle, then Francis.
At the Commonwood community meeting, you said something that was very impactful, at least what I think, is you said that you all are making very hard decisions because of these hard times, and you're asking the state to pretty much give you all credit for that. What is the example of this really tough decision of consolidating and an historic consolidation? What example is this setting for other districts who are actually facing these same trifecta of challenges?
Yeah, Dr. Morgan and I, communicate with our counterparts across the country, specifically in urban districts where we're seeing, as you know, the same declines with enrollment and population. And I will say that other districts are looking at Cleveland right now. Dr. Morgan recently presented at the Council of the Great City Schools. He presented where we were with this recommendation, but also how his team had come up with it, the community engagement that went into it. And he presented, not to undermine anyone else, but he presented alongside some other districts. He had the most questions because of the content of the plan, because it was around a challenge that districts are facing, urban districts and other districts are facing across the country. So this is not just a Cleveland issue. We hear a lot of comments about what's happening here. It's not just a Cleveland issue. Folks are looking at us. We've been really bold about the way that we're doing this because we can't afford to continue to, not to continue, but we can't afford to not center students and their education. School districts exist to educate kids, right? So that's what we've been doing. Anything to add, Dr. Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, Chair Ellicott was spot on for that. I will say the amount of DMs I get from either district leaders or board leaders. I have a friend who is board chair in Texas. She DM'd me last night after seeing what our board did and said we're in the same boat. Atlanta Public Schools just announced the closure of 16 schools. I know there was a leader in Chicago that reached out and said, they're in the need to do the same thing. So people are looking and seeing our plan. The feedback I've also heard, though, is most people are looking at it just from a loss standpoint or from a finance. And with the vision and the charge from the board, this is a plan that's first about what students can have. It's putting students first, and then the operational decisions afterwards. So really grateful for that. And the final thing I'll say is Director Stephen Dakin, who is the Director of the Department of Education and Workforce. We met with him at the beginning of this, and he told us, quite frankly, he said, this is a model. He said, there's not a district in this state that doesn't need to do the same thing. And I don't want to speak for him. I don't know what configuration he's talking about, but I heard it as broadly that this is something that everyone needs to do. And so we'll see how this looks like. There's going to be a lot that we'll learn through this, and we're ready to be partners to whoever wants to learn from us.
Francie? Yeah, I'm going to ask you a little bit more into the weedsy question, but when will parents and families know transportation plans for next year, since those are so integral to making school choices?
Yeah, so transportation is already available. The transportation information is already available on our website. So for transportation, we will still provide yellow bus transportation for all elementary students. And for all students, no matter if they're impacted by Building Brighter Futures, if they live 1 to 3 miles, they'll get transportation. We have district-wide transportation for specialty schools. We will still provide transportation for students with special needs, and we will still partner with RTA in our high schools for students who live over a mile. Now, specifically for those in Building Brighter Future schools, what we are providing an accommodation for students who are impacted through Building Brighter Futures, if they live over a mile, even if they're outside of 3 miles, for 2 school years, we'll give them transportation. For if they live less than a mile of their new school, of course, they can still walk. And then we will also do that specialty-wide transportation for those specialty schools that are emerging as well. So that is what we have of the district transportation plan now.
And what kind of outreach can parents expect in terms of just like understanding that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So one, there's a lot of outreach we have to do. That's one of the things I was mentioning, because just putting it in the email or just sending out, paper letters. And we know sometimes when we send paper letters out or when we do canvassing or door knocking, sometimes families aren't there. And so there's a multiple outreach that we're doing. So we have those transition supports in place, the choice navigators that are actually tracking students, making sure they have a choice, making sure they understand their transportation. We've already been training our central office team. In this time, actually prior to the recommendation, we had a whole team ready to receive Let's Talk calls, of which we were surprised we didn't actually get as much. We haven't had to use that team as much of the volume of calls we were ready to get, but we're prepared. Those are the types of things we're preparing for, getting outside support to really help us on the transportation modeling. So we're prepared to have that for students as well.
Tito, our last question.
I know a lot of work went into this. I want to know how you're feeling after this, vote went through unanimously. I know there's been a lot of feedback. Are you relieved? Are you confident? I know there's still more work to do. Just want to get, how both of you feel, after this vote happened.
I'm ready to take action. I'm thrilled that we can finally take action for our students and our families. And that is one of the core pieces of input we have been receiving over the past years. People want to know what's happening next. And so right now, we feel good that it passed, but it's time to get to work.
Yeah, similarly, one of the things I shared when I first got this role of, my core values, and one of them is continuous improvements. I never feel done. I never feel like the work is done. And we constantly are going. So I sent a message to the team last night. I was like, let's celebrate, let's rejoice. And it was something to the end of like, let's get to work. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. But at the end of the day, I was last night filled with so much emotion about what this plan could mean for kids. And what we're doing now that will just start, transformation for generations to come is something I feel blessed, honored, and humbled to be a part of. And we will work hard to make sure this works for our community and kids. Because like I also said, I do this work for kids like me. So this is really personal. I know Chair Ellicott said it's really personal. So we're all in to make this work.
Thank you.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. As Dr. Warren Morgan wraps up, the CEO of Cleveland Metropolitan School District, they do have a lot of work ahead of them. They need to get out into the public now and let parents know, hey, yours is one of the schools that's closing. Here is where the seat is being held at their new school for them. As you heard, the portal is expected to open up in January, that they can start doing that. But this is a monumental shift, make no doubt about it. And you heard Dr. Morgan talk about how this is happening all over the country. Birth rates are down. Just look at the numbers for Cleveland Metropolitan School District. In 2004, they had 70,000 students. That's 20 years ago. They now have just 34,000 students. That's a loss of 50% of their student population. They have way too few students and way too many buildings. So the fact that 29 of them are being closed or consolidated is a move to save $30 million a year. We will have a complete wrap up on this story because it does impact so many parents here in the Cleveland metropolitan area. We will have a complete wrap up coming up in our 3.5 hours of news and first alert weather at 3 o'clock on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a great day.